I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So up till previous class, we discussed some basics of shell scripting, and we also discussed about how permissions are defined for any file or directory, and how do you change those. Also, we tried to run a sample script, and we understood that okay, we need to read and execute permissions whenever we want to run a shell script. We had a small introduction to variables also when we were uh, going through this particular command of read, and we use that command in the scripting also, but that was very slight introduction. And we also discussed about the shebang character and its importance. It has to be the first line of the script, and it should determine uh, which type of language we are writing that script into. Okay, so today we will go ahead and discuss more about the shell variables. We only discussed very few points, okay, but we will discuss more about variables today. Okay, so first of all, what is a variable? So variable is a uh, user-defined object on the Linux, wherein you can put a particular value and can probably use that in some other in some coding or some other stuff. Okay, so how do you define a variable first of all? So first of all, whenever you are defining a variable, there are certain naming conventions to be kept in mind. Although there is no restriction of naming variables the way you want, but yes, to make it more professional and more in terms with the Linux environment, you must follow these naming conventions. But some of the characters are definitely not allowed, such as this. These are special characters. Okay. So the first naming convention is your variable name should have at least, it should have either characters that can be small or uppercase or number. Even an underscore is allowed, and your variable name can start with it, but you should take care that a variable name should not start with a number. It can start with either a character or an underscore. Numbers can be there in the variable name, but it has to be after the first character. Also, it is mostly recommended that you use capital letters. Okay? So whenever you are defining a variable, make sure you're using capital letters. And there are certain special characters in Linux, like star, ampersand, dollar symbol, uh, percentile symbol. So these are all special characters. These should not be used when you are defining a variable, because it would give Linux a hint that okay, now a special character is being used, and the corresponding meaning of that special character will then be applied over there. So make sure you don't use any special character in which Linux has its own meaning for them. Okay. Okay. So let's try to create a variable. You can define a very simple variable named var, And as I told you, you can have underscore also and numbers also in the variable name. So a simple way to define is just write the name and press enter. Sorry. Okay, simple way is to define the variable name, put a equals to sign and give it a value. Right, over here I defined this variable and gave it the value sign. Now how will you print this value? So whenever you want to access the value assigned to a variable, you will have to use, so let's say I want to print out the value, I will use echo. Echo will be used to print out the variables, followed by the dollar symbol. So whenever we want to access the variable's value, we have to use this special character dollar, followed by the variable name. So now if I echo this thing, it will print me the value which is being assigned to the variable side. Similarly, you can create as many variables that you want and print its value using the echo character followed by the variable name and dollar sign. Okay, this is the simplest way. Now, what if I don't want the values to keep on changing? So let's say if, when I defined this variable 1, I gave it a value Sahil. Now I want to remove its value and give it some other value. So value will keep on changing if I start giving it different values like this. Now what if I don't want this value assigned to the variable be changed? What I can do is I can make it read only. So as soon as I made gave this value Tasin to this variable, if I don't want to give change its value anymore or any further, I can make this variable read only like this. You have to type read only followed by the variable name. Now if I will try to change its value again, it won't allow me. It will say var1 is a read only variable and the value will still remain the same what it was earlier. So this is how you can make a variable read only. Okay, and what if you want to unset the value which you had assigned earlier? So let's talk about variable 2 first. So it had value SAH. Now what about if I want to remove this value and I don't want to even assign a new value to it? So I can do unset followed by the variable name. So now although the variable is existing, but it doesn't have any value. Okay, can you unset a read-only variable? So when we had defined variable 1, it was read-only, it had value Tasin. Let's try to unset var1. That is not allowed. It said cannot unset a read-only variable. Okay, so whenever you make a variable read-only, you cannot change its value. That's the only point. You cannot unset it also. Okay, let's talk about some special variables that Linux has. So Linux already has some variable whose meaning is predefined, and whenever you use those particular characters or variables, there will be a predefined meaning associated with it. So the first special variable is a dollar symbol. If I put echo dollar, it comes up with a number. Now this number is the process ID of the current shell or the executing shell script. Okay, so every process of everything that is running on a Linux server is called a process. Okay, how you can check the processes? So you can use the command ps with some option. I will use option -ef. Okay, let's just run ps-ef. So all of these things which are running, these are all processes, and you can see each process has a user which is running it. Then this particular number is the process ID. So each process will have a unique process ID. This is my process which is running, and this is its process ID. Okay. Now when do you say $, this basically points to the process ID of this current shell that I have opened. So this shell that I have opened, this is also considered as a process in Linux. Okay, and it has a process ID of 4144. These things will be very important when you are writing a script, because in that case this thing will point to the process ID which is running. Okay, so let me create a very simple shell script, and in here I will use a command to run a simple HTTP server. Okay, and I will run the script using shell. Now I will run it in a background process. Whenever we want to run a script as a background process, I will use nohup followed by that script name sh and ampersand. So this ampersand will make sure that when I run this command, it's running as a background process. Now what is the difference between a background process and a foreground process? So let's try to run it without these two keywords. Now this process which is running is a foreground process. You can see that as soon as I started running it, I cannot run any more commands of the Linux shell, because it's actually entered into the process as a foreground process. Now let's if I want to make sure, now if I want to exit this shell, I would have to interrupt it. So now the script is also stopped, but I have exit out the process, right? I have come back to the Linux shell. What if I want to make sure that it keeps on running and I also come back to my shell? In that case, you have to make it as a background process. So now I will use the same command, but I will put nohup to print out the state of the background process and ampersand at the end. This will make sure that this process is running as a background process. Okay, so now this process is running as this process ID. This is the process ID, and it's running as a background process. Now let me just make sure it's running. So I will use again the same command ps-ef, grep over this process ID. Now you can see this is as a shell script which is running. Okay, now let me just kill this process. Okay, this is killed now. Let me open the script again. Now I will also print out the process ID of the current shell. I will use echo $. Let's try to run it again. Let's see what has been printed out in nohup. Okay, my address already in use. It's because I think Python is still learning. Okay, now let's try to, first of all, let me just delete this nohub file so that it has correct, new logs being written. Okay, let's run that command again as a background process. Okay, so now this process is running as a process ID 7302. Now I had also wanted to print out the process ID while running this script. So that has been printed in nohub and its value is 7302. So you can see that echo dollar dollar is printing out the same number with which the script is running or the process ID of that particular script. Okay, so whenever you want to access the process ID of the current shell or the current script which is running, you will use the symbol dollar dollar, or you'll use this as a special variable there. Okay, now there is some more special variable. Other one is dollar exclamation, which is used to print the process ID of the last executed background shell. So if I just echo dollar this, you can see it is also printing out the 7302 because it was the last process that I ran in the background. Okay, so if you want to access the process ID of the last process that ran it as a background, you can use dollar followed by exclamation mark, or we call it as a so this is also a special variable. Okay, now every process will have some exit status. Okay, so if a process is failing, it will have an exit status other than 0. But if the process was running uh, fine, it will print out as an exit status. Sorry, if it's running, if any command ran fine, it will have an exit status of 0. Otherwise, it will have a non-zero exit status. So let me show you. Let's say I ran a command ls. Okay. Now if I print out, so now this command ran fine. If I want to print out the exit status, I can use dollar question mark for this command. You can see the value is 0. Now let me run another command, which is not exactly a command in Linux. So it didn't ran fine. Like it said command not found. What if I again do dollar question mark? You can see it has a non-zero exit status. So any command which doesn't went through fine will always have a non-zero exit status. Okay, but so how will this be useful? Let's say I'm writing a script wherein my logic depends upon the success of the previous command. Okay, so my logic depends upon the success of the previous command. Then I can use this particular variable and I can check whether the previous command went through fine, and if only it went fine, I can move ahead and put that thing in my logic. Okay, so as and when you start practicing them more, you will understand the importance of these variables. Okay, next is dollar hash. Dollar hash will be used to print the number of arguments supplied to a script. Okay, so let me kill that process first. Okay, let it be running. Let me just open the script again, and I will remove this line also. Okay, so I will now try to print the variables which I passed to the script. So let's just let it be a very simple script. in which I'm just printing out the name of the person. Okay. So I will print out hello dollar hash. Hello dollar, or I can say not hello, I can say the number of people is dollar hash, and what I can write before is echo, or I can say read. No, okay. Okay, let it be like this. So echo the number of people equals to dollar hash. So what I will do is I will pass the names to the script when I'm running it. I will pass some name. Okay, so now I have passed three names. So I want the script to print out the number of people which I passed to the script. So the value is 3. Now let's say I add one more name. Value is 4. So dollar hash will print the number of variables, or the number of variables that you have supplied to the script. How do you supply variables? So right after the way you were running the script earlier, we are giving the variables right next to it. Okay. Now in the same sequence, what if I want to print out not just the number but also the names of the people or the names of the variables which were supplied to the script? So I can say the first name it can be figured out by $1. The second name is $2, and so on. So the number of the variable will define its particular value also. So if you want to access the first variable, you can access it using $1. If you want to access second variable, its value will be $2, and so on. And if you want to access all the variables, you can use either $, or you can also access the same variables with $@ symbol. Okay, so let me just print this out. Let's run the same command. So now you can see the number of people is 4. The first name passed is Sahil, the second name is Tasin, and all the variables can be accessed like this. Either okay, so the number of variables can be accessed using $hash. The nth variable can be accessed using $n, and all the variables can be accessed using either $* or $@. Now there is a slight difference between these two, which I will explain soon. Okay, so $hash number $n if you want to print the nth argument pass, and $* is printing all the arguments. $@ is printing also all the arguments. A slight difference is $* is actually having all the arguments as double quoted, while $@ all the arguments are individually double quoted. Okay, so this difference will get more clearer when we discuss the conditional arguments. Okay, now if you want to print out the name of the script, that can also be done with another. So I was saying, right, each argument can be named, can be accessed using $n. What about if I want to access the name of the file? By default, the name of the script can be accessed using the 0th argument or $0. Okay, so the name of the script is $0, which is this. Okay, now a little more hint about $* and $@. So $* is actually considering all the parameters or all the arguments as an entire list, as one argument itself, while $@ will consider them as a separate argument. Let me just give you a little hint, a little example. Okay, so let's say in the same script, at the end I want to print out all the variables as a separate argument. So what I can do is, for I in $@, see, what difference can you like guess from this? So this is simple English. What I am doing is, for each value in $@, which is like this thing, I want to echo the $I. So for each value in this list, it will be printed out. Now what happened is, when I ran this command, you can see that all the values that I had passed, they got printed out in a separate line. In a separate line means it is considering them as a separate argument. So all of these are considered as a separate argument when it comes to the $@ symbol. But if I replace this $@ with $*, now, okay, sorry, we have to make sure that they are in quotes. So if I make sure it's in quotes, now it is considered as a single argument. But if I just now again make it a $@, but now make sure that they are in quotes. So this difference is only applied when both of these variables are used in either double quotes or single quotes. Now even in double quotes, $@ will print out the variables as a separate value, but $* is printing them out as a single argument. This is the only difference between these two special variables, $* and $@. Okay, so this was up till here was about single variable. We were declaring a single variable and we were giving it a single value. Now what if I want to create a single variable that has multiple values? Okay, a single variable name that would have multiple values. So to declare that, you define an array variable, or you also call it as an arrays. So how do you define it? Okay, so whenever you want to create an array, first of all, let's give it a name. Let's call it a var array. So I want to give it multiple values. I can do that using these two brackets. So I can say, and each value can be separated out, I think, with a space. Yeah. Okay. So now this type of variable is having single name, but it has multiple values. Let me just echo it. So if you echo just the variable name, only the first value gets printed out. But what if you want to make sure every value of this array variable gets printed out? I think it has to be placed in a bracket. Yeah. So to access a particular value, what I can use is square brackets followed by the number of the variable of the value. So this is, I think, okay. Okay. Also, this thing has to be in curly brackets. Okay. So the number will start from 0. So if you want to access the first value which is assigned to this variable, which is array variable, you have to use echo dollar curly bracket variable name. In square brackets, you have to put in the number 0 and then the curly bracket close. So if I want to access, let's say, the first value, the number should be given as 0. If I want to access the second value, I will give 1. Similarly, the third value, 2, and so on. And what if you want to print out all the values? You can use either star or @ symbol. Again, I think if I just make sure it's in quotes, the meaning might change. One second, let me check that from here. Yeah. So if I consider this whole in quotes, there will be a difference of how star and okay, so that is not appearing in here. Probably when I run a for loop. So let's run the for loop here also. For I in first use dollar. This is how a for loop is defined. I will explain it more when we discuss about about loops basically. So what it's doing is for every element, I may refers here to every element in this list or a variable. So for every element in this list, then I have put a semicolon. Semicolon means that the command is done up till here. Then this will be a next command. So for every I in this particular list, do means what I need to do with that I. So I want to echo out its value, and finally I want to done. So this is how you define a for value. So when I use a app @ symbol, and that has to be in double quotes, each value is printed as a separate line. But if I use star, all the values are printed in the same line, which means it is considered as a single argument here, but it is considered as a separate argument here. Okay, so that is how you can access and define a array variable. Okay, any doubts till here? So variables are very important whenever you are writing a shell script, and all these utilities, all these ways are very helpful when you are working with variables. Okay, if there are no questions, let's move on and discuss about variable substitution. Okay, so what about if we want to substitute a value associated with a variable? Okay, so let's use this example first. I don't think this var is defined. Let me try to get its value. Okay, it is defined, but it doesn't have a value. Now, what this thing will do, if var is null or unset, right now this var is unset. There is no value assigned. That means it is unset. Now, if I use this kind of a variable substitution, and if it finds out that the variable var is null or unset, the word is substituted for the variable. So right now you can see this variable was unset. If I run this command, let's give it a value Sahil. Okay, now let's echo var again. Okay, one second. Yeah, let me echo $var again. Okay, what is happening here is I'm actually checking whether the variable var has is a value null or unset, and if it does, what I am doing is I am printing the value Sahil. But let's say, so earlier, so when I see this var, it was unset. That's why Sahil is getting printed. Let's say I will give it some value. Let's say I assign some value to variable var. I give it value Tasin. So now it's not printing out Sahil. It's printing out the value which is assigned in the variable. Okay. So the important thing to understand here is this kind of a variable substitution can be used whenever you are not sure about whether a variable has already been assigned a value or it hasn't assigned a value. So if you want to make sure that, okay, let's say I create a variable fr, okay, and I don't assign it any value, or basically it's unset. Now, if I'm not sure when I'm writing a script, I'm not sure whether this variable has a value or not, what I can do is I can use the substitution. So $fr, if it doesn't has a value assigned, I want to give it a value, let's say Sahil. So right now whenever I run this, I see, okay, fr doesn't has a value, that's why Sahil is printing out. But if fr would have some particular value, this command will print that value only and not the word that I want to substitute in here. Okay. And what if, so right now this was just printing out. What if I also want to assign that value to this variable? Okay, so right now this was, let's say I unset it again. I'm unsetting fr variable. I want to print out echo. So it's printing out Sahil. That means it hasn't, uh, it hasn't have any value, which I can check like this also. So fr doesn't have a value, right? What if I just not want to only print out the value, but I also want that value to be assigned to this variable. So instead of in the same thing, instead of using a hyphen here, I can use a equals to. So now not just it print out fr, but it also assign the value Sahil to the variable fr. Okay. So this is the difference in this part where we are using our equals to sign and we are substituting the value to the variable. And what if you just want to check whether the variable is unset or not, you can use a question mark symbol here. So let's say instead of equals to, I use a question mark, and after question mark you can print out the message. So let's say I print out checking variable is null. It's printing out the value. Let's unset it first. So if it is unset, that means it doesn't have a value. Then I want to print out the message variable is null. So now it's printing out an error code saying variable is null because there is no value assigned to the variable. What if I assign it again some value? Then it won't print out that message. It will just print out the value. Okay, so this kind of question mark, colon question mark can be used if you want to check and print a corresponding message. Okay, now let's check the last option that we have is plus. So first of all, let's unset it. Then here I will use plus Sahil. Instead of equals to, let's use plus. So nothing is printed out, but what if I equal $fr? Okay, nothing is printing out. It says if the var is set. Okay, now there's a slight difference. Now it will deal with whether the var is set or not. Let's make it, so give it some value and try to run this again. So when a particular variable is already set, then it will print out the word which is right to the plus symbol here. But there is one catch here. This word is not replaced as the variable's value. So even if I print out fr now, it will have the same value, sh, which I assigned it here. But if I print it using this thing, it will substitute the value and print out the same. Only in this command it will substitute, it will not replace that value in the variable. Okay, so yeah, these things can be a little tough to understand initially, but make sure you practice it the same way that I showed you here, all these things. Okay, so practice these variables yourself and you can understand that better. For your understanding, I have also pasted some of my practice and you can also use the same. Okay, so let me put it as this. So this is some example commands, example practice commands. To help you out with the variable substitution. This is not to be used because this is basically my server IP addresses. Okay, but make sure you run these commands one by one, and you will make sure you will understand the concept better. Okay, so with this we are already done, like almost done with variables. We are left with some arithmetic operations, okay, and some file operators. I Will not go much deep into all of these, but yes, I will give you a hint, and I want you guys to understand and practice it on your own, following this, uh, following these notes. But yeah, I will show you some small examples for each of them, and make sure you can, so that you are familiar with them and you can practice it along. Okay, so what about if we want to run some expression on our variables? Okay, what about we want to run some expressions? Let's say we want to add two variables values, or we want to subtract, or we want to multiply, all of that stuff. Okay, so that can be done using these variable operators. Okay, how many operators do we have? So we have a plus, we have a star, we have a slash, we have a percentile. Plus will mean that you are adding, star will mean you are multiplying, slash will mean you are dividing, and there is also a percentile operator which basically print out the remainder of a division. Okay, so to make it more clearer, let me define two variables first. Okay, let's define a variable a which has value 1. We defined a variable b which has value 2. Okay, now I want to add these two variables. Okay, so whenever you are dealing with addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division with any of these variables, that can be done using a way like this. So you have to define another variable. Let's me define another variable c, and I want to add these two values. Now you will use a special symbol called asterisk like this, and within this special variable I will write expr, expr referring to expression. Then I will say $a, and since I want to add, then I can say $a plus $b. Okay, so now if I print the value of c, so c has a value 3, which is come out by adding these two variables. Okay, so whenever you are dealing with expressions which deals with two different variables, the syntax will be like this. You have to use in the both of them into these characters, and it should start with expression, then whatever you want to do with the two variable. Let's say I wanted to divide them, so let me give them some more value. A will make 4, b will make 2, sorry, b will be 2. Now let's give c a value which comes out by dividing a by 2. Okay, so let's print out c. So c has a value 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. There is another special variable, special operator called percentile. Now this is not a percentage which is being done. Mostly people confuse it that way. Percentile, what it will do is it will print out the remainder which was observed when A was divided with B. So when I divided 4 by 2, the remainder of this operation was 0, right? Because there was no remainder left out. But if I divide 4, so let's make 4 divided by B, let's give it value of B equals to 3. Okay, just for the clarity, let me print out the values of A. A is 4, B is 3. Now I will divide 4 by 3, the remainder will be 1. So if I do this thing, it will print me the value of the remainder when I divided A by B, and that should be 1 in this case. Because if I divide 4 by 3, the remainder is 1. 3 ones are 3 and the remainder left out is 1. Okay, so this is also kind of a division only, but yes, it will print you the remainder. Okay, let's understand. So we have done so far covered plus. Let's use minus now. So 4 minus 3 is also 1. That is also printed out. Let's also try multiplying. Okay, since this is a special variable, we have to surpass it using this symbol, a forward slash. This will whenever you use a forward slash before any special variable, it will surpass its actual meaning in the Linux term. Okay. So now if I print it out, it has actually multiplied these two values. Okay, so these are the arithmetic operators and the way that we use them. Again, I have printed out some commands for you to understand. Okay. Similarly, there are some Boolean operators also. Okay, let me just print out. Each having a different meaning. So you have LD, GT, LD means less than. Okay, so LD here means less than, GT here means greater than, LE means less than or equal to, GE here means greater than or equal to, NE here means not equal. Okay, to make you more understand on this, let's use this command as an option. So what is this command checking? First of all, it says if $A, which means if the value of A is equals to value of B, then echo yes or print out yes. But if the value is not equal, else echo no, and then we have to stop. So whenever we start if, we have to end it with fi. So what is it printing out? Okay, one second, I think something is wrong here. Yeah, so there has to be a space between these two. Okay, so if $A equals to $B, let's see what is the value of $A. Okay, A has value 4, B has value 3. So A is not equal to B, right? That's why it is printing out no. Now instead of this thing, let's use not equal to. Now it should print out yes. Okay, what am I missing here? Oh, hyphen symbol. Okay, so A is not equal to B, that's why it's printing out a yes. The same thing I think I can achieve using this symbol. This also means not equals to. Okay, so hyphen any or this symbol, they both have the same meaning. Now let's see whether a is greater than. So I can use hyphen gt, greater than. Yes, a has a value 4, b has a value 3, so it's greater than. Now is it smaller than? This should print out no, or less than. lt, it's printing out no because a is not less than. Is a greater than or equal to? Yes, it's greater than, and so that also qualifies as equal to also. Sorry, it's either greater than or equal to, right? So it's giving me yes. Similarly, less than or equal to no. Okay, so you can use these operators if you want to check whether two things are uh, same or not. Let's say I have added another variable here, c equals to 3, and I want to use the same thing in the. So I want to do, okay, if a is less than or equal to b, or c is less than or equal, or c is less than or equal to b. So this condition is not true, but this condition is true now because c has a value 3, b also had a value 3. B also had a value 3. So that now this condition is come out to be true. So it will print out yes. But if I will make it and instead of or, I make it and, this will print as no, because although this condition is coming out to be true, this condition was false. Therefore, to print a yes with the and operator in between, I wanted both the conditions to be true, which was not the case. That's why it's printed out no. Okay. So again, the point remains the same. You have to practice it. That's why I have given all these as example practice commands, and you have, I think, a week's time. Just try practicing it. These two are and or operators. Okay. And whenever you're practicing it, make sure that you understand. Okay. So this was about Boolean operators or and operators. Now we are left with some string variables, and how do you check between those, like how do you check the values of two string variables? So what, first of all, what is a string? Up till now we were comparing all of this for numbers, right? We were giving some numbers to the variable and we were checking its values. What if we have to do the same thing with characters? So let me define another variable d, which has value sahil. So this is a string. Whenever you define a character sequence of characters between two quotes, they are called string. So let's d be sahil, let's e be capital sahil. Okay, let f be some other name, Tasin. Okay, what if I want to check whether these two string variables are same or not? Okay, so let's use this command as an option. So I will do d equals to e. It says no. Why no? Because this is in small case, this is in capital case. So what is equal to doing here? Okay. What if I use a single equals to? Because now we are dealing with string operators. Even that is no. What if I make e equals to smaller Sahil only? Will it print out yes? Yes. So now it print out yes because e is equals to d. So whenever you're dealing with string operators, you can use a single equals to. I'm not sure what double equal to will print out here. Yeah, even that is printing out yes. Okay, now let's see whether not equals to works the same way. So now instead of E, I will make it F, for example. It should print out yes because F has value Tasil, D has value Sahil. Both of them are not equal. That is been printing out. Okay, so these two remains the same. Equals to and not equals to. They are both the same. Now there are few more added for whenever it comes to dealing with string. One is hyphen Z. So hyphen Z would mean whether a variable has zero characters in it or whether its size is zero. So let me just define a variable first where and don't assign it any value or its size is zero now, right? If I use the command again, so I'm checking whether the size of this variable is zero. It print out yes because the size is actually zero. What if I give it some value? Now its size is not zero, so it's printing a no. You can check the same thing with hyphen n. If it was zero, it was printing out yes. Now if I make it hyphen n, that will check whether it's a non-zero. It will print out yes. So hyphen z and hyphen n, these two are used to check it. You can also, instead of yes no here, I could have also done something like echo. So this same command, the complete command wherein I'm printing out yes or no, I could have checked whether it's false or true by just simply doing I think echo str, then the variable. Okay, 1 second. Okay, it has to be brackets, I think. Dollar sign. Okay, this I need to check how we can do it using str. Okay, maybe it's okay. I need to check this, but yes, there is this another other option which you can use to check whether a variable is true or it's zero or non-zero. Okay, so again I have printed out some commands for you to try out. Okay, now we are left with file test operators where we can check whether a file is existing or not, and I also have printed out some example commands. You can go through them by yourself, or I will take another 15 minutes in next class to explain them. But yes, since you have this week time, just try to complete it till here and also try to see the commands that I have mentioned after that. The most important one will be the conditional statements on the loops. We have already been using the conditional statement. So this if else, these are conditions, and the for loop that we were using earlier, they are looping statements. So yeah, like this. So we will discussing that too, and But yes, up till then, you still have time and you have the notes also here. So try to cover them up as much as possible. Okay. Okay. So that's all for today. Let's uh, discuss more, in the next class. So next week we will be starting with yarn service. Okay. We have completed till HDFS only. We will be starting with the computational part of Hadoop. But yes, up till then, this week time that you have, try to cover up as much shell scripting as you can. Okay, any questions? Anyone? Any questions for previous classes if you have? Okay, so I think just practice it out. If you still have questions, we can discuss that also in next class. And if you are still struggling with anything, don't shy away from asking me. Okay, uh, this is the time when you have to spend learning stuff. So yeah, but ultimately you have to practice that. Then only you will get the confidence and probably have questions out of it. Okay, so that's all for today. I've uploaded this notes already. Start practicing today from today itself. I would say, but yes. In the next class, we will cover up the remaining session, the remaining part of this notes, and then we will move ahead with the yarn concepts. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for joining. Good night.
Thank you.